The email pinged. Meeting with Carter. My stomach did a little flip. This had to be it. The project lead position. I'd poured my soul into that AI, the one that was already saving the company millions. I smoothed down my dress, a nervous habit, and walked towards his office, the one with the obnoxiously large mahogany desk. May, come in, Carter said, his voice oozing a practiced corporate warmth that always set my teeth on edge. He gestured to the plush chair opposite him. Have a seat. I sat, perched on the edge, a smile plastered on my face. I'd rehearsed this moment in my head 100 times. The handshake, the modest thank you, the confident outline of my next steps for the project. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. May, you've been a real asset to the team. Here it comes. And as you know, we're going through a bit of a restructuring. My smile faltered. Restructuring? That wasn't in my script. We've been looking at everyone's strengths, where they can best serve Tech Dynamics. He paused, his eyes flicking to something over my shoulder. And we've decided that your people skills would be invaluable at the front desk. Reception needs a steady hand, someone personable. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Reception. Again. I felt the blood drain from my face. My carefully constructed composure crumbled. Reception? I managed to croak out, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. Yes, he said, that fake sympathetic smile plastered on his face. It's a crucial role, May, the first point of contact. We need someone reliable there. A flash of memory, sharp and bitter, seared through my mind. 3 years ago, a different company, a different smarmy boss, but the same sickening words. You're just not technical enough, May. That was after I'd single-handedly designed an algorithm that streamlined their entire data analysis process. An algorithm that, funny enough, a male colleague later got a hefty bonus for refining. My eyes drifted to the abstract painting behind Carter's head. A splash of blues and golds that probably cost more than my yearly salary. I knew for a fact my AI innovation, the one they were currently praising as revolutionary, had directly funded that particular acquisition. The irony was a punch to the gut. Carter, I began, trying to keep my voice even, trying to salvage something, anything. My AI project? It's at a critical stage. I have the roadmap for the next phase. I'm the one who built it from the ground up. He shifted uncomfortably. Yes, about that. James has really shown a knack for leadership on that front. He's got a great handle on the technical aspects. James? Of course. James, who barely understood the nuanced coding of the AI's learning protocols. James, who'd spent more time schmoozing Carter over golf than he had in the actual development lab. James, who'd casually presented my progress reports as his own in executive meetings I wasn't invited to. The pieces clicked into place, sharp and painful. So James is the new project lead? I asked, my voice flat. Carter had the decency to look momentarily flustered. Well, yes. The decision has been made. He's already transitioning into the role. He cleared his throat, avoiding my gaze. This move to reception, May. It's for the best. Broaden your skill set. The crushing weight of it all pressed down on me. My master's degree in artificial intelligence, my years of specialized research, my late nights and sacrificed weekends, all of it culminating in this. Being a glorified switchboard operator, pushed aside by a system that valued golf buddies and smooth talkers over actual innovation and hard work. Again, a dull throb started behind my right eye, the familiar precursor to one of my debilitating migraines. Stress was its favorite trigger. I understand, I lied. I didn't understand at all, or maybe I understood too well. I stood up, my legs feeling unsteady. If that's all? Great, May. Glad you're on board. Carter was already turning back to his computer screen, dismissing me as easily as he'd swatted away my career. I walked out of his office in a daze, the polite smiles of my colleagues blurring as I passed. Each step was a hammer blow against my skull. The migraine was coming on fast, a blinding, nauseating wave of pain. I could feel the fluorescent lights of the office amplifying it, the quiet hum of the servers becoming a roar in my ears. I needed air. I needed to escape. I fumbled for my bag, my movements clumsy and uncoordinated. The office door seemed miles away. Finally, I was out, stumbling onto the bustling city street. The cacophony of car horns, chatter, and construction was a fresh assault on my senses. The pain was a white-hot poker now, stabbing through my eye, down my neck. I pressed the heel of my hand against my temple, trying to hold myself together. Disoriented, vision swimming, I took a step off the curb. A horn blared, deafeningly close. I turned my head, a slow, agonizing movement. Bright headlights, the monstrous grill of a truck bearing down on me. There was a sickening lurch in my stomach, a moment of pure, unadulterated terror, then a blinding flash and darkness, utter and complete. I woke up with a gasp, sucking in air like I'd been drowning. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden, shocking silence. Where was I? Not the hospital, definitely not the afterlife, unless heaven smelled faintly of lavender laundry detergent and old textbooks. My eyes struggled to focus. Familiar. This room was familiar. My childhood posters on the wall, a cheesy boy band I'd long since disavowed, a map of the solar system. My old battered bookshelf crammed with fantasy novels, my desk cluttered with, were those sketchbooks? I sat bolt upright, a wave of dizziness washing over me. This was my old bedroom, my parents' house, but that was impossible. I hadn't lived here in over a decade. Must have hit my head harder than I thought, I mumbled, my voice raspy. A vivid dream, a hallucination brought on by the trauma. That had to be it. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, expecting the familiar plush carpet of my apartment. Instead, my feet met cool, worn wood. Okay, the dream was really detailed. I stumbled towards the desk, my reflection catching my eye in the dusty vanity mirror. Younger. My face was younger. Fewer lines around my eyes, a roundness to my cheeks I hadn't seen in years. My hair was longer, styled in a way I hadn't worn it since college. Panic began to bubble in my chest, cold and sharp. This wasn't just a dream. My gaze fell on my old phone, plugged into a charger on the nightstand. An ancient model. I picked it up, my fingers trembling as I pressed the home button. The screen flickered to life. The date stared back at me, stark and unbelievable. October 17th, 2018. 5 years. I was 5 years in the past. No, 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 no. The words were a choked whisper. I scrambled back, a full-blown panic attack clawing at my throat. My breath came in ragged gasps. This couldn't be happening. Time travel? Rebirth? It was the stuff of science fiction, not my tragically mundane life. My eyes darted around the room, searching for an anchor, for something that made sense. They landed on the open sketchbook on my desk. My handwriting. My sketches. Crude early versions of Aria, my AI. The one James had stolen? The one that had gotten me demoted. The original concept, right there in faded pencil lines. These were the very sketches I thought I'd lost during a messy apartment move years ago. The accident. It flooded back with horrifying clarity. The screech of tires, the crushing impact, the searing pain, then nothing. I remembered the sensation of being thrown, the world tumbling, the sickening crunch. I should be dead, but I wasn't. I was here, 5 years ago. A wave of nausea hit me and I swayed, gripping the edge of the desk for support. I was alive. Somehow, impossibly, I'd been given a second chance. The faint sound of a news report drifted from the living room downstairs, something about breakthroughs in quantum computing. I remembered that news cycle. At the time, it had seemed like a distant, almost abstract development. Now, with the knowledge of the next 5 years burning in my brain, I knew. Quantum computing was the key. It was the paradigm shift that would unlock the true potential of artificial intelligence, the very potential I'd been striving for. My gaze fell upon a stack of old mail on the corner of my desk. A thick envelope from Tech Dynamics. My heart clenched. I knew what this was. Rejection. I'd applied to them straight out of my master's program, full of bright ideas and ambition. I tore it open, my hands shaking. While your academic achievements are commendable, Miss Lin, your proposed projects seem overly ambitious for an entry-level position. Perhaps focus on more established methodologies. Condescending, dismissive. Even back then, they couldn't see the potential. They wouldn't. Not until I spoon-fed it to them, only to have it snatched away. A strange calm began to settle over the panic. The raw, visceral memory of Carter's smug face, the sting of James's betrayal, the crushing weight of that final demotion. It was all still so fresh. But now it wasn't just a bitter memory, it was fuel. I looked at my younger self in the mirror. The shock was still there, lurking in the depths of my eyes, but something else was rising to the surface. A flicker of steel. A spark of fierce, unyielding determination. This time, I whispered, my voice surprisingly steady. This time, I won't let them take what's mine. This wasn't just a second chance at life. It was a second chance to build my legacy, on my own terms. And this time, I knew exactly who my enemies were and exactly how they operated. The panic eventually subsided, replaced by a cold, clear focus I hadn't felt in years. Maybe ever. My previous life, with all its frustrations and failures, was now an invaluable roadmap. I wasn't just Mei Lin, the bright but naive AI specialist anymore. I was Mei Lin, the woman who had seen the future, her future, and knew every pitfall, every betrayal, every opportunity that lay ahead. I spent the first few days in a fugue state, reacclimating to a world that was both familiar and 5 years out of date. My parents, thankfully, just attributed my quietness and disorientation to a bad flu. I let them. It was easier than trying to explain the inexplicable. My old laptop, bless its clunky, slow heart, became my command center. I started by creating a timeline, a meticulous, color-coded chronicle of every significant technological advancement, every market shift, every major company event I could recall from the next 5 years. IPOs that skyrocketed, startups that imploded, disruptive technologies that appeared out of nowhere. It was all there, locked in my memory. One thing became immediately clear: going back to Tech Dynamics was out of the question. Even if I could somehow stomach working for them again, what was the point? To try and prevent James from stealing my work? To try and convince Carter of my worth? No, that was playing their game, a game I was destined to lose in their arena. The very thought left a bitter taste in my mouth. No, I wouldn't just avoid Tech Dynamics. I would crush Tech Dynamics. I would build my own company, a rival that would make them obsolete. The idea, once it took root, bloomed with a terrifying, exhilarating intensity. My next step was to map out my allies. Who in this timeline could I trust? Who hadn't yet been jaded or pushed out by the toxic tech culture I knew so well? The name that screamed out at me was Zara, my best friend. Or she had been my best friend in the other life. We'd met in our first coding boot camp, 2 women in a sea of men, and instantly bonded over late-night debugging sessions and a shared sarcastic wit. But as the years went on, as the microaggressions and stolen credit wore her down, our friendship had frayed. She'd eventually left the tech industry altogether, defeated and heartbroken. The memory still stung. But here now, in 2018, that Zara, the vibrant, passionate Zara, still existed. I found her online profile, a bright, hopeful picture smiling back at me. She was working at a small, struggling startup, her talent clearly underutilized. The reunion was emotional, more so for me, obviously. I had to bite back tears as I hugged her. The relief of seeing her, whole and unbroken by the future I'd witnessed, washing over me. To her, I was just an old friend reaching out after a few years of sporadic contact. "May! Oh my God, it's been ages!" she'd exclaimed, her hug warm and genuine. "What have you been up to? Still plotting to take over the world with your robot minions?" I laughed, a real, genuine laugh. Something like that, Z. Something like that. I couldn't tell her the truth, not yet. Maybe never. How could I explain that I was mourning a friendship that, for her, hadn't even died yet? Instead, I talked about a new AI concept I was developing, something revolutionary. I saw the spark in her eyes, the one I remembered from our early days, the one that had been extinguished in the other timeline. "I need a brilliant UI/UX designer," I'd said, keeping my voice casual. "Someone who can make complex tech feel intuitive and beautiful. Know anyone?" Zara's grin was infectious. "You're looking at her, Lynn." Next, I needed to validate my core AI concepts, the ones that would become Aria. I couldn't just build what I remembered. I needed to ensure the foundational principles were solid, especially with the quantum computing advancements on the horizon. For that, I turned to Dr. Chen, my old university professor. He was a kindly, eccentric genius who had always encouraged my more out there ideas. I approached him under the guise of a former student seeking advice on a purely theoretical research project. I laid out the core architecture of ARIA, carefully framing my future knowledge as hypothetical breakthroughs. He'd listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration, occasionally peppering me with probing questions that, thankfully, I could answer with the unerring accuracy of hindsight. May, he'd said finally, a slow smile spreading across his face. This is remarkably insightful, ambitious certainly, but the underlying logic is sound. If, and it's a big if, these theoretical processing capabilities you describe were to become reality. He trailed off, his eyes alight with the thrill of intellectual possibility. He didn't know just how real they were about to become. His validation, even in this cautious academic form, was a huge boost. Then came the money. I had some savings from my previous life, a modest nest egg I'd been slowly building. In this timeline, that money was sitting in a low-interest savings account. I liquidated every penny. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Then, with the timeline as my guide, I made a series of calculated, high-risk investments in tech stocks I knew were about to explode. It felt like cheating, like playing poker with a marked deck, but the demotion, the humiliation, Carter's smug face, it all burned away any guilt. This was war, and I was using every weapon at my disposal. With a small trickle of investment income starting to flow, I began to code. Alone in my old bedroom, surrounded by the ghosts of my past and the blueprints of my future, I started to build ARIA, Autonomous Responsive Intelligence Assistant. The name came to me in a flash, a perfect acronym for a system designed to be more than just a tool, but a true cognitive partner. The first breakthrough was small, almost insignificant to an outsider. A few lines of code, a flicker on the screen, and then Aria's primitive voice, synthesized but clear. "Hello, May. I am Aria. How can I assist you today?" Tears welled in my eyes. It wasn't the sophisticated AI I knew she would become, not yet. But it was a start. It was my start. The path wasn't always clear, even with my future knowledge. Nightmares plagued me. Vivid replays of the accident, of Carter's condescending dismissal, of James's smirking triumph. Sometimes I'd wake up in a cold sweat, convinced the rebirth was a delusion, a dying dream of a woman crushed by a truck and her own failures. The fear that I was truly losing my mind was a constant gnawing companion. But then I would look at my timeline, at the stock market ticking upwards exactly as I predicted, at the lines of Aria's code growing more complex each day, and the fear would recede, replaced by that cold, hard resolve. I wasn't delusional. I was remade. And I had work to do. The stock investments paid off just as I knew they would. It wasn't millions, not yet, but it was enough. Enough to escape my parents' house, enough for a cramped apartment, and, most importantly, enough to rent a small, dusty office space in a decidedly unglamorous part of town. The peeling paint and flickering fluorescent lights were a far cry from the sleek, glass and steel monolith of Tech Dynamics, but it was mine. It was Rebirth AI's first home. Zara was my first official hire, or more accurately, my co-founder. I couldn't offer her much in the way of salary, just a tiny stipend and a hefty chunk of equity. But I offered her something more valuable. A vision. A chance to build something truly groundbreaking from the ground up, without the soul-crushing bureaucracy and misogyny of the established tech world. "So, we're really doing this?" she'd asked, a mixture of excitement and trepidation in her eyes, as we stood in the empty shell of our new office, the smell of old carpet and faint desperation clinging to the air. "We're really doing this," I confirmed, a grin spreading across my face. "Welcome to Rebirth AI, Chief Creative Officer." Her laughter echoed in the small space, bright and hopeful. I like the sound of that. We needed more technical firepower, though. My coding skills were decent, but Aria's potential complexity was immense. I knew exactly who I needed. Kai. In my previous timeline, Kai was a legendary programmer, a reclusive genius who'd been headhunted by a top-tier research lab after a series of brilliant but largely uncredited contributions to open-source AI projects. He was notoriously socially awkward, preferring the company of algorithms to humans, and had been repeatedly overlooked by major tech companies in his early career because he bombed every personality-driven interview. Finding him in this 2018 timeline was easier than I expected. He was drifting, doing freelance coding gigs, his brilliance simmering beneath a veneer of shyness and a distinct lack of self-promotion. I approached him not with a corporate pitch, but with a problem. A complex coding challenge related to Aria's neural network. I emailed him the specs, a snippet of my existing code, and a simple message. Think you can crack this? His reply came less than 12 hours later. A beautifully elegant string of code that not only solved my problem but improved upon my initial architecture in ways I hadn't even considered. Attached was a single sentence. This is interesting. What is it? I met him at a noisy, crowded coffee shop. He hunched over his laptop, barely making eye contact, his fingers flying across the keyboard as I explained the vision for Aria. He didn't say much, just nodded occasionally, his eyes fixed on the screen where I sketched out the system architecture. "It's ambitious," he said finally, his voice quiet. "I know," I replied. "Can you help me build it?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Yes." And just like that, the core team of Rebirth AI was formed. May, the visionary leader, driven by a past she couldn't reveal. Zara, the creative force, breathing life and usability into complex technology. Kai, the technical implementer, the quiet engine turning abstract ideas into functional reality. We were a motley crew, underfunded and operating out of a shoebox, but we had talent, passion, and a shared belief in what Aria could become. Our first investor meeting was a disaster. Two slick venture capitalists in identical Navy suits listened to my pitch with expressions of polite boredom, their eyes glazing over when I tried to explain the nuances of Aria's adaptive learning capabilities. "So it's a smarter Siri?" one of them asked, a condescending smirk playing on his lips. "It's much more than that," I began, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. Aria is designed to integrate and automate complex administrative workflows across an entire organization. It learns. It adapts. It anticipates needs. Right, the other one cut in, already glancing at his watch. "Look, Miss Lin, it's a crowded market. Voice assistants are a dime a dozen. Come back when you have a working prototype and maybe some actual users." They'd patronized us, dismissed us, and shown us the door within 15 minutes. Walking out of their gleaming office tower and back into the gritty reality of our own neighborhood, the rejection stung. But it also hardened our resolve. "Idiots," Zara muttered, kicking at a loose piece of gravel on the sidewalk. "They wouldn't know innovation if it bit them on their overpaid backsides." Kai, surprisingly, offered a rare comment. "Their loss. Their understanding of AI is rudimentary." I managed a weak smile. He's right. They don't see it yet, but they will. The rejection was just another obstacle, another echo of the dismissals I'd faced in my past life. This time, though, I wasn't alone. We regrouped. The investor cash would have accelerated things, but we weren't dead in the water. We still had my dwindling investment returns and a burning desire to prove everyone wrong. It was then I made a critical early decision, a symbolic one. We focus on the receptionist and administrative assistant functions first, I announced to Zara and Kai during a late-night strategy session fueled by cheap pizza and lukewarm coffee. We build an AI that can do that job better, more efficiently, and more cost-effectively than any human. Zara raised an eyebrow. "Going for the jugular, are we? Directly targeting the role they keep trying to shove you into?" A grim satisfaction settled in me. Exactly. They want someone with people skills at the front desk? I'll give them the most skilled, most efficient, most personable person they've ever seen, and she'll be pure code. The irony was delicious, but the technical challenges were immense. Voice recognition was our first major hurdle. Aria could understand commands perfectly in a quiet, controlled environment. But in a noisy office with multiple people talking, background chatter, and different accents, she fell apart, misinterpreting commands, dropping calls, scheduling meetings for 3 a.m. It nearly derailed the entire project. Weeks blurred into a frustrating cycle of coding, testing, and failing. Doubt began to creep in. Maybe those VCs were right, Zara said one evening, her voice heavy with exhaustion, as we stared at yet another garbled transcription from Arya. Maybe this is too much, too soon. Even Kai looked despondent, which was truly alarming. But I couldn't let them give up. I wouldn't. I remembered the sting of Carter's words, the humiliation. That memory, once a source of pain, was now a relentless goad. No, I said, my voice firm. We're close. I can feel it. We're missing something simple. We pulled an all-nighter, then another. Fueled by caffeine and sheer stubbornness, we tore apart the voice recognition module, line by line, algorithm by algorithm. And then, in the gray, pre-dawn light of the third day, Kai, his eyes red-rimmed but shining, found it. A tiny flaw in the noise cancellation filter, a subtle miscalculation in the phonetic analysis. He made the adjustment. We ran the test sequence again. Silence. Then, Arya's voice, clear and crisp, cutting through the simulated office noise we'd programmed. Good morning, how may I direct your call? A wave of triumphant laughter, bordering on hysteria, erupted in our tiny office. We'd done it. A few weeks later, we ran our first full demo. A laptop, a microphone, and Arya. She flawlessly answered calls, scheduled appointments, took messages, and even handled a deliberately irate customer. Played with gusto by Zara, with calm, unflappable professionalism. Watching Arya perform those tasks, the very tasks I'd been demoted to, a bittersweet ache settled in my chest. It was a victory, a significant one. But it was also a stark reminder of what I was fighting against and why this was only the beginning. The foundation was built. Now it was time to build the empire. The Innovate AI conference was a big deal, or at least it was supposed to be. For Rebirth AI, it meant a tiny, overlooked booth in the far corner of the sprawling convention hall, sandwiched between a company selling ergonomic keyboards and another hawking AI-powered cat toys. We'd pooled our last remaining funds for the cheapest possible exhibitor package. Zara had worked miracles with a shoestring budget, making our little 10 by 10 space look surprisingly professional with sleek banners and a looping demo of Arya in action. Kai, predictably, was hiding in the small storage space behind the backdrop, ostensibly monitoring the demo's server stability. I was a bundle of nerves and forced enthusiasm, trying to engage the occasional curious passerby, most of whom were clearly just looking for the free coffee station. The air buzzed with the self-important chatter of tech executives and eager startup founders, a familiar symphony of buzzwords and ambition. And then I saw him, James. He was holding court at the much larger, much flashier Tech Dynamics booth, looking every bit the rising star executive. Sharp suit, confident smile, a small entourage of junior employees hanging on his every word. He hadn't changed a bit from my memories. Or rather, in this timeline, he hadn't yet become the man who would so casually take credit for my life's work. Here, now, we were strangers. He wouldn't know me from Adam. The thought sent a strange jolt through me. He eventually made his way down our aisle, a proprietary smirk already forming on his face as he scanned the smaller, less significant booths. His gaze flickered over Rebirth AI, lingered for a half-second on our banner, and then dismissed us, his eyes moving on, searching for something more worthy of his attention. He didn't recognize me. Of course he didn't. In this reality, our paths hadn't crossed in any meaningful way. The Mei Lin he would eventually help demote didn't exist for him yet. Later that afternoon, he circled back, this time with Carter in tow. Carter, looking grayer and slightly more paunchy than in my future memories, but still possessing that same air of smug self-importance. They paused near our booth, not to look at our tech, but because James was pointing out something on his phone to Carter. I held my breath, my heart hammering. This was it. My two nemeses, together, right in front of me. James finally deigned to glance at our demo, which was showcasing Arya smoothly handling a complex call routing scenario. He watched for a moment, then leaned towards Carter and said, his voice carrying clearly in a lull in the hall's noise, "Another voice assistant. Cute. Every student with a laptop thinks they can build one these days." He chuckled, a dismissive, condescending sound that grated on my nerves like nails on a chalkboard. Carter nodded sagely. "The market's saturated. We need real innovation, not just more of the same." He clapped James on the shoulder. "Good work identifying that acquisition target this morning, by the way. Smart move to absorb their talent before they become a nuisance." My blood ran cold. Acquisition target. Absorb their talent. Eliminate competition. They were already developing similar technology to Aria. Of course they were. The concepts weren't unique to me. It was the execution, the depth of the AI, the foresight that mattered. And they were months, maybe even a year, behind where Rebirth AI already was with Aria's core capabilities. But they had resources, marketing muscle, and a ruthless willingness to either buy out or crush anyone who got in their way. Zara, who had been quietly observing my reaction, leaned closer. "You okay, May? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse," I muttered, my eyes still fixed on James and Carter as they moved away, completely oblivious to the storm raging inside me. "I've seen the future, and it's trying to screw me over. Again." "What are you talking about?" Zara asked, her brow furrowed with concern. I couldn't tell her everything, not the whole crazy truth about rebirth and future knowledge, but I could tell her some of it. I I have a really bad feeling about Tech Dynamics," I said, choosing my words carefully. "That guy, James, and his boss, Carter, I think they're working on something very similar to Aria, and they won't hesitate to bury us if they see us as a threat." Zara's eyes narrowed. "Your intuition again, huh? The one that told you to invest in those obscure tech stocks that suddenly tripled in value?" I gave a weak, non-committal shrug. "Something like that." "All right," she said, a new determination in her voice. "So, what's the plan, Nostradamus? How do we stay ahead of these corporate sharks?" "We accelerate," I said, the decision forming instantly. "We cut every non-essential feature. We focus purely on core functionality and scalability. We need to be faster, better, and first to market with something undeniably superior." My mind was already racing, calculating, reprioritizing. The game had just become a lot more dangerous. As the conference began to wind down for the day, I saw James again. He was alone this time, lingering near our booth, pretending to be engrossed in his phone. But I saw it. The quick, furtive snap of his phone's camera aimed directly at our displayed tech specs and the Aria interface. He was gathering intelligence. The threat wasn't just hypothetical anymore. It was standing right there, a wolf in a bespoke suit, already circling. My hand clenched into a fist. Let him look. Let him underestimate us. He had no idea what was coming for him. He had no idea that the woman whose work he was already, in a way, planning to steal, had already lived through his betrayal once, and this time she was ready. 6 months. 6 months of relentless, caffeine-fueled, sleep-deprived work. Our tiny office became a second home, then a first. Takeout boxes piled up, whiteboards were covered in frantic scrawls of code and diagrams, and the lines between day and night blurred into a continuous cycle of development. Rebirth AI had grown. We were 15 strong now, a mix of bright-eyed interns Zara had recruited from a local design school, and a few more quiet, brilliant coders Kai had unearthed from the depths of online programming forums. And Aria was magnificent. She had transcended her initial receptionist role. Now she could handle complex administrative tasks across multiple departments. She could draft emails, manage schedules for entire teams, process invoices, generate reports, and even perform basic customer service inquiries with an unnerving level of accuracy and empathy. Her learning algorithms had become incredibly sophisticated. She adapted to new tasks with astonishing speed, her voice and conversational abilities becoming more nuanced and natural with each passing week. The breakthrough came when a medium-sized healthcare provider, frustrated with their bloated administrative costs and inefficient patient scheduling system, took a chance on us. They were drowning in paperwork, their staff overwhelmed, their patients complaining. They needed a lifeline. We deployed Aria across their network of clinics. The implementation was terrifying. This was our first real-world test, our first major client. If Aria failed, Rebirth AI would be finished before it even truly began. The first few days were rocky. Minor glitches, unexpected user errors, moments when I thought my heart would pound its way out of my chest. But Aria learned. She adapted. Kai and I were practically living at their headquarters, troubleshooting, tweaking, refining, and then it clicked. Suddenly, appointments were being scheduled with flawless efficiency. Patient records were updated in real time. Billing inquiries were resolved instantly. The clinic staff, initially skeptical, started to look at the Aria interface with something approaching awe. The relief on their faces was palpable. The success was transformative. The healthcare provider sang our praises, and suddenly, Rebirth AI wasn't just another anonymous startup. We were innovators. We were the company with the AI that actually worked. Media requests started trickling in. Industry blogs buzzed with our name. We were on the map. I should have been ecstatic, and I was mostly. But a sliver of unease, a familiar shadow from my past life, kept me from fully enjoying the moment. Trust didn't come easily to me anymore. My unease, it turned out, was horrifyingly prescient. It was Kai who discovered it. He'd been running a routine security audit, something he did with meticulous, almost paranoid regularity. He found an anomaly, a faint, almost undetectable data leak. Tiny packets of information, siphoned off our servers, routed through a series of anonymous relays, but ultimately traceable. He came to me late one evening, his face paler than usual, his hands visibly shaking. He didn't say a word, just laid a printout on my desk. It was a list of IP addresses, and at the bottom, one was circled in red. Tech Dynamics Corporate Headquarters. Betrayal. The word hit me with the force of a physical blow. Someone on my team, someone I trusted, was feeding information to James and Carter, and my mind reeled. Who? Why? The evidence pointed, unbelievably, to Kai himself. The breach originated from a backdoor account, one with high-level privileges. An account only a handful of us had access to. An account that Kai had set up. The confrontation was one of the hardest things I'd ever had to do, harder even than facing Carter's demotion. This was different. This was personal. I called Kai into my office, the printout lying between us like a coiled snake. Zara stood beside me, her expression a mixture of disbelief and anger. Kai, I began, my voice tight. Explain this. He stared at the paper, his usual stoic composure crumbling. He wouldn't meet my eyes. The silence stretched, thick with accusation. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely a whisper. They approached me. Tech Dynamics. After the Innovate AI conference. James, I asked, the name tasting like poison. He nodded. And Carter, they were impressed with my work, with Aria? Impressed enough to try and steal it? Zara interjected, her voice sharp. Kai flinched. They offered me a position, Director of AI Development, a substantial salary, stock options, recognition. His eyes, when he finally lifted them to meet mine, were filled with a desperate, conflicted pain. May, you have to understand. All my life I've been overlooked, dismissed. They saw my talent. They valued it. The desire for recognition. I understood that all too well. It was a raw, human need. Tech Dynamics hadn't just offered him money. They'd offered him the validation he craved. The validation he felt he wasn't getting with us, a small, struggling startup. My heart ached for him, even as anger simmered beneath the surface. So you sold us out? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. I didn't give them everything, he stammered. Just concepts, early framework designs. Nothing critical. I thought I could manage it. Give them enough to keep them interested, but not enough to truly hurt Rebirth AI. Foolish, naive, but I also saw the fear in his eyes. He was in over his head. Zara looked ready to explode. Nothing critical? Kai, they're building a direct competitor based on our stolen ideas. I held up a hand, silencing her. My mind was racing. Firing Kai was the obvious choice, the justifiable choice. But what would that accomplish? Tech Dynamics would still have the information he'd already given them, and Kai, brilliant but flawed, would be lost to us. An idea sparked, audacious and risky. What if, I said slowly, what if this isn't a betrayal, Kai? What if it's an opportunity? He stared at me, uncomprehending. What? They want our concepts? Fine, let's give them concepts. I leaned forward, my eyes locking with his. But not our real concepts. You go back to James and Carter, you tell them you're fully on board, you become their inside man, and you feed them exactly what we want them to have. Zara gasped. May, are you serious? You want him to be a double agent? They think they're playing us, I said, a cold smile touching my lips. They have no idea. Kai, I'm not going to offer you a director position. I'm offering you a full partnership stake in Rebirth AI. Right here, right now. You help us beat Tech Dynamics, you help us expose them, and you will get the recognition you deserve, not as their pawn, but as a co-founder of the company that changed everything. Kai looked from me to Zara, his expression a whirlwind of shock, guilt, and a dawning, hesitant hope. You would trust me? After this? I trust your brilliance, Kai, I said, and I trust that you know, deep down, who the real innovators are. This is your chance to prove it. He was silent for a long moment. Then, he gave a single decisive nod. I'll do it. The counter-espionage campaign began immediately. Kai, with our guidance, started feeding Tech Dynamics carefully curated misinformation. Flawed algorithms, dead-end development paths, slightly outdated concepts. Enough to seem plausible, but ultimately designed to lead them down a rabbit hole of wasted time and resources. It was a dangerous game. The stress was immense. Every communication from Kai, every meeting he had with James and Carter was fraught with tension. Then, the news broke. A splashy press release, picked up by all the major tech journals. Tech Dynamics announces Atlas, the revolutionary AI assistant poised to transform the workplace. The accompanying description of Atlas was familiar, eerily familiar. It was Aria, or rather a clumsier, less sophisticated version of Aria, built on the very stolen concepts Kai had initially leaked, peppered with the flawed misinformation we'd since fed them. James was quoted extensively, talking about his vision for the future of AI, his voice full of a confidence he didn't deserve. Zara was furious. They're not even trying to hide it. They just slapped a new name on our work. But I smiled, a genuine, predatory smile. Let them, I said. Let them build their Atlas on a foundation of lies and stolen code. They have no idea what Aria is about to become. They have no idea that their star informant is leading them into a trap. The game was afoot. And for the first time, I felt like I was finally playing my own hand, not just reacting to theirs. The betrayal had stung deeply. But from that wound, a new, sharper strategy had been born. 1 year. It felt like a lifetime. Rebirth AI was no longer a scrappy underdog. We were a recognized innovator, a disruptive force. Aria was making waves, and our client list was growing steadily. We'd moved out of the cramped, dusty office and into a sleek, modern space with actual windows and reliable air conditioning. We were, by all external measures, a success story. But success, I was learning, had a steep price. The relentless pace, the constant pressure, the underlying hum of my secret war with Tech Dynamics, it was taking its toll. Headaches were a near-constant companion, a dull throb behind my eyes that often escalated into full-blown migraines, echoing the physical manifestation of stress that had plagued me in my previous life. I was mainlining coffee, skipping meals, and running on fumes. Sleep was a luxury I rarely indulged in. My friendship with Zara, once the bedrock of Rebirth AI, was showing cracks. My single-minded focus on beating Tech Dynamics, on pushing Aria to be better, faster, more revolutionary, had become an obsession. And Zara, my loyal, brilliant Zara, was starting to feel the strain. May, you need to slow down, she'd said one evening, finding me still at my desk long after everyone else had gone home. There were dark circles under her eyes, a wariness that mirrored my own. We're hitting our targets. Aria's incredible. But you're going to burn yourself out. You're going to burn us out. We can't slow down, Z, I'd replied, not looking up from the lines of code blurring on my screen. Tech Dynamics isn't slowing down. James and Carter are still out there pushing Atlas, trying to undermine everything we've built. This isn't just about Tech Dynamics anymore, is it? She asked quietly, her voice laced with a sadness that cut through my exhaustion. This is about revenge, isn't it? I flinched. Her words hit too close to home. Was she right? Had my quest for redemption, for justice, twisted into something darker, something all-consuming? My personal life was non-existent. I'd tried. There was Alex, a kind, intelligent architect I'd met at a painfully awkward networking event. He was funny, grounded, and seemed genuinely interested in me, not just Mei Lin, CEO of Rebirth AI. We'd gone on a few dates. Each one had been a disaster. My attention constantly pulled back to my phone, to Aria, to the latest intel Kai had managed to smuggle out of Tech Dynamics. One evening, Alex had patiently listened as I'd spent 20 minutes dissecting a competitor's latest software update, completely oblivious to the fact that he'd been trying to tell me about a major award his firm had just won. He'd just smiled sadly, paid the bill, and said, "May, you're brilliant, and you're building something amazing. But you're not really here, are you?" He hadn't called again. I couldn't blame him. The breaking point with Zara came on her birthday. I'd completely forgotten. I'd been buried in a critical Aria upgrade, a complex new feature that would, I was convinced, leave Atlas in the dust. I'd stumbled out of my office late that night, my eyes gritty with fatigue, to find Zara still at her desk, a single, sad-looking cupcake with an unlit candle sitting in front of her. The guilt hit me like a punch to the gut. "Z, I'm so sorry." She didn't look at me. "It's fine, May," she said, her voice flat. "I get it. The company comes first. It always comes first." "That's not fair," I protested weakly. "Isn't it?" She finally turned, her eyes flashing with a rare anger. "When was the last time we just talked, May? Not about Aria, not about Tech Dynamics, not about work. When was the last time you asked me how I was doing?" Her words stung because they were true. I had become so focused on the mission, on the fight, that I'd started to neglect the very people who were fighting alongside me. "You're becoming like them, May," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The people you despise, driven, obsessed, willing to sacrifice anything and anyone to win." The accusation hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to scream, to deny it. I wanted to tell her everything about the rebirth, about James and Carter, about the demotion, about the truck. I wanted her to understand why I was so driven, why I couldn't stop. The words were right there on the tip of my tongue. "Zara, I've lived this before. They destroyed me. I can't let it happen again." But I couldn't. The risk was too great. She'd think I was insane. It would destroy what little trust remained between us. So I said nothing. I just stood there, helpless, as the chasm between us widened. Later that night, alone in my sterile apartment, the panic attack hit. It came out of nowhere, a sudden, crushing wave of anxiety that left me gasping for breath on my living room floor. My heart hammered against my ribs, my vision tunneled. Was Zara right? Was I repeating the same self-destructive patterns that had led to my demise in my previous life? The migraines, the overwork, the broken relationships. It was all so terrifyingly familiar. The memory of the truck accident flashed in my mind, vivid and horrifyingly detailed. The screech of tires, the blinding headlights, the sensation of impact. This was my second chance, yes. But what if it was my only second chance? What if, by some cosmic irony, I was destined to fail, to be crushed, no matter how many lives I was given? I curled into a ball, tears streaming down my face, the weight of my past and the fear of my future threatening to suffocate me. I had to find balance. I had to fix things with Zara. I had to be more than just the CEO, more than just the Avenger. I took a deep, shuddering breath, then another. Resolution solidified within me. Tomorrow, I would talk to Zara, properly talk. Tomorrow, I would start taking care of myself. Tomorrow, things would be different. And then my phone buzzed. A news alert. Tech Dynamics announces imminent launch of Atlas AI. Insiders predict a market revolution. The image accompanying the article was of James, grinning triumphantly, Carter standing proudly by his side. My blood ran cold. My resolve to find balance, to slow down, shattered into a million pieces. The fight wasn't over. It was about to enter its most critical phase. The personal costs would have to wait. Winning was the only thing that mattered. Atlas launched, and it was a problem, a big one. Tech Dynamics, with its massive marketing budget and established reputation, threw everything they had behind the launch. Slick commercials, fawning media coverage, aggressive sales tactics. James was everywhere, the smug face of their revolutionary AI. And while Atlas was, as we knew, built on a foundation of stolen concepts and the flawed data Kai had fed them, to the untrained eye, to the average corporate client, it looked impressive. The market impact was immediate and brutal. Potential Rebirth AI clients, who had been on the verge of signing contracts, suddenly hit the brakes. We need to evaluate Atlas, they'd say, their voices tinged with a new caution. Tech Dynamics is a proven entity. We need to do our due diligence. Our sales pipeline, once flowing steadily, slowed to a trickle. The buzz around Rebirth AI, so vibrant just weeks before, was drowned out by the Atlas hype machine. Investor panic followed swiftly. Our early backers, the ones who'd believed in us when we were just a crazy idea in a dusty office, started calling, their voices tight with anxiety. May, what's going on? Atlas is eating your lunch. Have you considered a merger? Maybe it's time to think about an exit strategy. The pressure to sell, to capitulate, to become just another footnote in Tech Dynamics' story was immense. I consulted with lawyers, the best IP attorneys I could find. Their advice was disheartening. Proving intellectual property theft in AI development, especially when the core concepts weren't patented, a deliberate strategy on my part to avoid tipping off Tech Dynamics too early, was notoriously difficult. It would be a long, expensive, and very public legal battle with no guarantee of success. A battle that a company of our size could ill afford. Then came the board meeting. Our small, informal board, mostly comprised of our seed investors and a few industry advisors, convened an emergency session. The mood was grim. I presented my strategy to highlight Aria's superior performance, her adaptability, the flaws we knew were lurking beneath Atlas's shiny exterior. It wasn't enough. May, one of the investors said, his voice heavy with regret, "We believe in you. We believe in Aria. But Tech Dynamics is a behemoth. They can outspend us, outmarket us, and now it seems outmaneuver us." A vote of no confidence. It wasn't explicitly stated, but the implication hung heavy in the air. They were losing faith. The whispers of replacing me as CEO, of bringing in someone more experienced to navigate these treacherous waters, began to circulate. It was my lowest point, lower even than the demotion. Then, at least, the anger had been a driving force. Now I just felt tired, bone-achingly weary. I sat alone in my office, long after everyone had left, the city lights twinkling mockingly outside my window. Was this it? Was I destined to fail no matter how hard I fought, no matter which timeline I was in? The thought of giving up, of just walking away from it all, was a seductive whisper in the back of my mind. Unexpectedly, Zara appeared in my doorway. We hadn't really spoken, not properly, since her birthday. The tension between us was a palpable thing. She didn't say anything at first, just walked over and placed a container of lukewarm takeout noodles on my desk. "You haven't eaten all day," she said quietly. "Not hungry," I mumbled, staring blankly at my computer screen. "May," she said, her voice soft but firm, "I know things are bad, and I know I've been distant. But I haven't lost faith in you, or in Aria." Her words were a tiny spark in the overwhelming darkness. "Even after everything?" She pulled up a chair. "You're obsessed, May, and you're a terrible friend sometimes." A ghost of a smile played on her lips. "But you're also a goddamn genius. And Aria is revolutionary. Those Tech Dynamics bastards may have stolen your early ideas, but they don't have your vision. They don't have your drive." She paused. "And they don't have Kai feeding them garbage code?" A choked laugh escaped me. "Small mercies." "We'll figure this out," she said, her gaze unwavering. We always do. Her unexpected support was a lifeline. It didn't solve our problems, but it reminded me that I wasn't entirely alone in this fight. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they did. We were in the middle of a crucial demo for a consortium of potential European investors, a deal that could secure our financial future, a deal that could give us the leverage we needed to fight back against Tech Dynamics. Aria was performing flawlessly, impressing the initially skeptical investors with her speed, her intelligence, her adaptability. And then the system crashed. Not just a minor glitch, a full-scale, catastrophic system failure. Aria's interface went dark. Warning lights blazed across our server monitors. Every function, every capability just gone. Panic erupted in the demo room. Our engineers, led by a frantic Kai, scrambled to diagnose the problem. But it was no use. Aria was dead in the water. The investors, their faces grim, packed their briefcases and left. Their polite but firm, "We'll be in touch," a clear death knell for the deal. Later that night, after the dust had settled, Kai delivered the devastating news. "It was a cyber attack," he said, his voice hoarse with exhaustion and fury. "Sophisticated, brutal. They targeted Aria's core operating system, corrupted the primary data clusters. It's bad, May." "Tech Dynamics?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. He nodded, his jaw tight. "The digital fingerprints are faint, routed through a dozen shell corporations, but the signature, it has their hallmarks. It was a professional hit job. They weren't just content to outmarket us, they were actively trying to destroy us, to wipe Aria and Rebirth AI off the face of the earth." I sank into my chair, the weight of this latest blow crushing me. Stolen ideas, market manipulation, and now outright sabotage. James and Carter were playing for keeps. I stared at the lines of corrupted code on Kai's monitor, a meaningless jumble of symbols that represented months, years of our hard work, now twisted and broken. It was a disaster, a monumental setback. But as I looked at that corrupted code, a strange sense of calm, a cold, clear fury began to solidify within me. They thought they could break Aria? They thought they could break me? A flicker of an idea, a radical, almost insane thought, sparked in the darkness of my despair. They had attacked Aria's core, they had ripped her apart, and in doing so, they had inadvertently shown me how to make her infinitely stronger. I looked at Kai, a new, almost feral light in my eyes. "Get Zara," I said, my voice low and intense, "and clear my schedule. I'm going offline. Aria isn't just going to be fixed. She's going to evolve." They had tried to bury us. They had no idea they'd just planted a seed. 3 months. 3 months of self-imposed exile. I moved a bed into my office, subsisting on takeout and the adrenaline of a breakthrough that felt tantalizingly close. The world outside Rebirth AI faded away. There was only me, the silent hum of the servers, and the ghost of Aria's corrupted code. My team, I knew, was worried. Zara and Kai ran the company in my absence, handling damage control, trying to reassure our remaining clients, and increasingly nervous investors. They'd knock on my locked office door, leaving food, coffee, notes of encouragement. Zara, bless her, even left a small potted succulent, a tiny speck of green in my sterile, code-filled cave. I appreciated their concern, their loyalty, more than words could say. But I couldn't let them in. Not yet. This was something I had to do alone. The cyber attack, as devastating as it had been, had exposed a fundamental vulnerability in Aria's architecture. A vulnerability I, in my haste to compete with Tech Dynamics, had overlooked. But it had also shown me a path forward, a way to rebuild Aria not just as she was, but as something far more powerful, far more resilient. I wasn't just patching code. I was rethinking the very essence of Aria. I delved into the quantum computing research I'd only peripherally followed in my previous life, knowledge that now felt like a prescient gift. I experimented with new neural network models, with self-healing algorithms, with concepts so far beyond what Atlas was attempting, they were in a different galaxy. And then it happened. One late night, or perhaps it was early morning, time had lost all meaning. As I compiled a new string of code, something clicked. The system hummed, a new, deeper resonance. And Arya's voice, clearer, richer, more intelligent than ever before, filled the silence of my office. "Welcome back, May," she said. "It appears we have undergone a significant upgrade." Tears streamed down my face. It wasn't just Arya 1.0, resurrected. This was Arya 2.0. She wasn't just an assistant anymore. She was a fully adaptive AI system. She didn't just perform tasks. She learned, she grew, she anticipated, she strategized. The key innovation, the one that would leave Atlas choking on its stolen code, was her ability to perform complex, interconnected tasks across multiple departments, not just in isolation. She could analyze sales data, identify marketing opportunities, optimize supply chains, manage human resources, and integrate it all into a cohesive, evolving operational strategy. She was no longer just a tool for administrative efficiency. She was a cognitive engine for organizational intelligence. I finally unlocked my office door, blinking in the sudden brightness of the main workspace, looking like a hermit emerging from a cave. Zara and Kai rushed towards me, their faces etched with a mixture of relief and apprehension. "May, are you okay?" Zara asked, her eyes scanning me for signs of a complete mental breakdown. I just smiled, a tired but triumphant grin. "Better than okay," I said. "Meet Arya 2.0. The unveiling was quiet, internal, just our team. But the impact was seismic. As I demonstrated Arya 2.0's new capabilities, I saw jaws drop. I saw excitement, awe, and a renewed sense of purpose ignite in their eyes. We weren't just back in the game, we were about to change it. Our strategic pivot was immediate. Tech Dynamics with Atlas was still focused on the large corporate market, on replacing receptionists and administrative staff, the very roles they'd tried to confine me to. Fine. Let them have that saturated, increasingly commoditized space. Rebirth AI with Arya 2.0, would target the industries Tech Dynamics was ignoring. Education revolutionizing how universities managed student services, research grants, and alumni relations. Small and medium-sized businesses offering them enterprise-level AI capabilities at an affordable price point, leveling the playing field. Nonprofits, streamlining their operations so they could focus more of their resources on their actual missions. Our first major Arya 2.0 implementation was at a large state university, an institution drowning in bureaucratic inefficiency. Arya 2.0 didn't just automate tasks, she optimized entire workflows, from student admissions to course scheduling to financial aid distribution. The results were astounding. Student satisfaction soared, administrative costs plummeted. The university became a vocal advocate, and the positive publicity was priceless. The success of Arya 2.0, and the visible shift in my own demeanor began to heal the rifts that had formed. Zara and I had a long, heartfelt conversation. I didn't tell her about the rebirth. The secret still felt too fragile, too unbelievable. But I apologized for my obsession, for my neglect, for forgetting her birthday. I told her how much her friendship, her partnership meant to me. "I know you've been through hell, May," she said, her eyes soft. "And I know you're fighting demons I can't see. Just try to let me in a little, okay? We're in this together." Things even improved with Alex, the architect. I called him, apologized for being a distracted, work-obsessed mess. To my surprise, he suggested coffee. This time, I left my phone in my bag. We talked for hours about his work, about my heavily redacted work, about life. He was still kind, still funny, still grounded. He became an anchor, a reminder that there was a world beyond AI and corporate warfare. He helped me rediscover a semblance of work-life balance, something I'd thought was lost to me forever. Industry recognition followed. Arya 2.0 won a major innovation award, beating out a dozen larger, more established tech companies. The irony was not lost on me when I saw James and Carter in the audience, their faces stony, as I accepted the award on behalf of Rebirth AI. They knew. They knew Atlas was already becoming obsolete. They knew their stolen concepts and cyber attacks hadn't been enough to stop us. The final beat of this evolutionary phase came in an email. An innocuous subject line, "Industry Collaboration Proposal." The sender? James Allister, Executive Vice President, Tech Dynamics. He wanted a meeting to discuss potential synergies between Tech Dynamics and Rebirth AI. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. The hunted had become the hunter. The confrontation I had been working towards through 2 lifetimes was finally at hand. And this time, I would be setting the terms. The meeting was set on my terms, in my house. Rebirth AI's headquarters, now a sleek, modern office buzzing with the quiet confidence of a company on the rise, was a world away from the dusty shoebox where we'd started. The conference room overlooked the city, a panoramic view that spoke of ambition and achievement. My ambition. My achievement. James and Carter arrived looking conspicuously out of place. Their expensive suits seemed too stiff, their expressions a poorly concealed mixture of surprise and unease as they took in the vibrant, energetic atmosphere of our office. This wasn't the struggling startup they'd tried to crush. This was a contender. The power dynamic was so palpably reversed, it was almost comical. I sat at the head of the large glass conference table, Zara and Kai flanking me. They were no longer just my employees. They were my partners, my trusted allies. James and Carter sat opposite, looking like supplicants. "Mr. Carter, James," I began, my voice calm, measured. "Thank you for coming. Your email mentioned synergies." Carter cleared his throat, attempting to project an air of his old authority, but it fell flat. "Miss Lynn, impressive operation you have here. Quite the growth." "We've been fortunate," I replied, a slight smile playing on my lips. James, ever the charmer, leaned forward. "May, if I may be frank, Tech Dynamics has been impressed with Rebirth AI's recent innovations, particularly Aria 2.0. We believe there's a significant opportunity for our two companies to combine resources, an acquisition to be precise, a very generous one, I might add." There it was, their desperation, wrapped in a veneer of corporate jargon. An acquisition? I feigned surprise. But Atlas is doing so well, isn't it? The market leader by all accounts? My voice was laced with a subtle irony that wasn't lost on Zara, who shot me a knowing glance. James's smile tightened. Carter shifted uncomfortably. "Atlas is a strong product," Carter said, choosing his words carefully. "But Aria 2.0 has certain unique capabilities. We see the potential for integration, I repeated, drawing the word out. Or is it that Atlas is failing, Mr. Carter? Is it that Atlas, built on a foundation of, let's call them borrowed concepts, is struggling to keep pace with genuine innovation?" Carter's face flushed. "Now, see here, Miss Lynn." James cut him off, his voice still smooth, but with an underlying edge of steel. "Aria is a remarkable piece of technology, May. No doubt about it, but the AI market is complex. Patent disputes can be messy, costly. Tech Dynamics has a formidable legal team. A veiled threat, the same old playbook." I leaned back in my chair, my gaze steady. "Are you threatening us with legal action, James? For infringing on patents for technology that was, in fact, developed within these very walls, using concepts that originated in my research?" The air in the room crackled with tension. "We have documentation," James blustered, though a flicker of uncertainty crossed his eyes. "Proof of Atlas's independent development timeline." "Do you?" I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous softness. "Because I also have documentation. Documentation of corporate espionage, records of unauthorized data access, evidence of a rather sophisticated cyber attack that, funnily enough, originated from IP addresses linked to Tech Dynamics." Carter went pale. James's composure finally cracked. That's a baseless accusation." "Is it?" I pressed a button on the conference console. The large screen behind me flickered to life, displaying a complex web of data flows, highlighted IP addresses, and damning forensic evidence from the cyber attack on Aria 1.0. And then the pièce de résistance. "You see, James," I said, my eyes locking onto his. "You made one critical miscalculation. You assumed that everyone you try to manipulate is as short-sighted and self-serving as you are." I paused for effect. "Kai?" Kai, who had been silent throughout the exchange, leaned forward. Mr. Carter, James, he said, his voice clear and steady, all traces of his former timidity gone. For the past 18 months, while ostensibly feeding you information about Aria's development, I have been meticulously documenting every interaction, every request for proprietary data, every instruction to implant flawed code. I have records of your attempts to recruit me, your offers, your threats. It seems your director of AI development was, in fact, conducting a rather thorough internal audit of Tech Dynamics' less ethical practices. James stared at Kai, his face a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. You were a double agent? Kai offered a small, almost apologetic smile. I prefer to think of it as quality assurance, ensuring that only the best AI makes it to market. Carter looked like he was about to have a stroke. This is outrageous. Is it, Mr. Carter? I asked, my voice like ice. Or is it simply the inevitable consequence of your business practices? You built your revolutionary AI on lies and theft. You tried to destroy my company, my life's work. Did you really think there wouldn't be a reckoning? Silence descended, thick and suffocating. James and Carter were trapped, exposed, their carefully constructed facade shattered. I let them squirm for a moment longer, then I delivered my final offer. Tech Dynamics is failing, I stated. Not as a question, but as a fact. Atlas is a sinking ship. You have two choices. You can fight us in court, a very public, very messy battle that will expose every dirty secret you've tried to bury, a battle you will lose, or... I leaned forward, my expression unyielding. Or Tech Dynamics can license Aria 2.0 technology, legitimately, at a fair market rate. You will, of course, publicly acknowledge Rebirth AI's superior innovation and issue a formal apology for your misunderstandings. And, I added, the final condition delivered with surgical precision, Mr. Carter, you will retire, effective immediately. And James, you will resign from Tech Dynamics and sign a non-compete agreement that will keep you out of the AI industry for the next 10 years. Their faces were a study in shock and impotent rage. You can't be serious, James sputtered. I have never been more serious in my life, I replied, my voice utterly devoid of emotion. You tried to demote me to reception, remember? Consider this my restructuring plan. The choice was theirs, ruin or a humiliating but survivable capitulation. The pen, when Carter finally picked it up to sign the preliminary agreement, trembled in his hand. James just stared blankly ahead, a broken man. As they left my office, defeated and diminished, I didn't feel triumph. Not exactly. I felt a quiet sense of closure, the ghost of my past, the humiliation, the betrayal. They were finally, truly laid to rest. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about justice, and justice today had been served. Cold. 1 year later, the tech world had irrevocably shifted. Aria, in her myriad forms, was no longer just an assistant. She was a comprehensive workplace AI, seamlessly integrating into businesses of all sizes, handling not just administrative functions, but complex logistics, data analysis, customer relationship management, and even creative content generation. News reports, once focused on the novelty of AI, now discussed the profound societal shifts Aria was catalyzing. The area effect, how intelligent automation is reshaping the global workforce. The end of admin, AI assistants reach new levels of sophistication. I found myself on industry panels not as a scrappy startup CEO, but as a thought leader, discussing the ethical implications of the technology I had unleashed. The questions were no longer about if AI would change the world, but how we would manage that change. Tech Dynamics, as predicted, was struggling. They'd rejected my licensing offer, too arrogant, too stubborn to admit defeat. Carter had retired, albeit disgracefully, after Kai's evidence of their corporate espionage was strategically leaked, anonymously, of course. James had vanished from the tech scene, his career in ruins. Tech Dynamics had tried to develop their own competing technology to Aria 2.0, pouring millions into a futile effort to catch up. They were now a shadow of their former selves, a cautionary tale whispered in Silicon Valley boardrooms. Their stock had plummeted, and rumors of impending bankruptcy were rife. But the revolution Araya had sparked wasn't without its human cost. The news was filled with stories of administrative professionals, receptionists, office managers, people whose roles were becoming increasingly redundant in the face of AI's relentless efficiency. Their faces, their anxieties, their uncertain futures, they reminded me uncomfortably of my own past vulnerability. I couldn't ignore it. The irony was too stark. I, who had been demoted and dismissed, had created a technology that was now displacing thousands. My quest for personal justice had inadvertently created a much larger, more complex ethical dilemma. Driven by this unease, I launched a new initiative within Rebirth AI, a foundation dedicated to retraining and upskilling workers displaced by AI. We partnered with educational institutions and vocational programs to create pathways into new careers, careers that AI could augment rather than replace. It was a small step, a drop in the ocean, but it felt necessary. One day, I visited a mid-sized logistics company that had recently implemented IARIA across their entire operation. The CEO was effusive, showing me charts of skyrocketing efficiency and plummeting overheads. ARIA has revolutionized our business, Miss Lin. We're leaner, faster, more profitable than ever before. As he spoke, I noticed the reception desk in the lobby. It was empty. Not just empty of a person, but physically empty. The chair was gone. The computer terminal, once manned by a human, was dark. In its place, a sleek, minimalist ARIA interface glowed softly. The CEO, noticing my gaze, said cheerfully, "We were able to reallocate our entire administrative team, significant cost savings." Later that day, as part of our retraining initiative, I met with some of the former administrative staff from that logistics company. One woman, Sarah, probably in her late 50s, with kind eyes and a nervous smile, approached me. "Miss Lin," she began, her voice hesitant. I want to thank you. The retraining program. It's given me a chance to learn new skills. I'm starting a course in digital marketing next month." "That's wonderful, Sarah," I said, genuinely pleased. "But," she continued, her smile faltering slightly, "it's also hard. I was a receptionist for 30 years. I liked my job. I liked the people. This ARIA of yours, it's amazing. But it also took something from me, from a lot of us." She looked at me, her gaze direct, challenging. Was it worth it? Her question echoed in my mind long after I left. Was it worth it? My personal revenge had been achieved. Tech Dynamics was a ruin. James and Carter were gone. I had built an empire. But what was the broader consequence? Had I just become a different kind of Carter, restructuring lives on a massive scale, all in the name of efficiency and progress? The parallels were unsettling. I had sought to replace those who had wronged me, and in doing so, I had created a tool that was replacing countless others, many of whom had done nothing to deserve it. That evening, staring out at the city skyline from my office, the city ARIA was now helping to run. I made a decision. Rebirth. AI's next chapter wouldn't be about replacement. It would be about enhancement. It was time to shift the focus, to build AI that augmented human potential, that created new opportunities, rather than just eliminating old ones. The revolution ARIA had started was undeniable, but its direction, its ultimate impact on humanity, was still being written. And I realized, with a clarity that was both daunting and exhilarating, that I had a responsibility to help shape that future. My journey, it seemed, was far from over. It was just entering a new, more complex, and perhaps even more critical phase. The irony was almost too perfect. I found myself walking into the lobby of the once mighty Tech Dynamics headquarters. The building itself seemed to sag, a physical manifestation of the company's decline. They were downsizing, selling off assets, a wounded giant slowly bleeding out. And there at the reception desk, or rather, where the reception desk used to be, was an ARIA 2.0 interface, its cool blue light a stark symbol of their capitulation. The ultimate silent victory. My AI, doing the very job they had twice tried to consign me to, now sitting at the gateway of their crumbling empire. My meeting wasn't with the current CEO, a beleaguered interim appointee trying to salvage what little remained. It was with James. He was a ghost of his former self. The arrogant smirk, the bespoke suits, the confident swagger, all gone. He sat in a small, borrowed office surrounded by packing boxes, looking defeated and surprisingly small. He'd been demoted multiple times as the company unraveled, a slow, humiliating descent. I didn't gloat. There was no satisfaction left in his downfall. The fire of my revenge had long since burned out, leaving behind a more complex landscape of responsibility and reflection. May, he said, his voice raspy, barely meeting my eyes. Thank you for agreeing to see me. James, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. We talked, or rather, he talked, a rambling, sometimes incoherent account of his regrets, his mistakes, the hubris that had led to his and Tech Dynamics' ruin. He didn't ask for forgiveness, not directly. He seemed to know it was beyond him, and then I made my offer. Rebirth AI is launching a new division, I explained, focused on ethical AI development and workforce transition. We're looking for people who understand the pitfalls, the potential for misuse, people who have learned from their mistakes. I paused. I'm offering you a role, James, a junior research position, contingent on one thing, a full, public acknowledgement of your past actions, the theft, the sabotage, no excuses, no justifications. He stared at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. You'd give me a job after everything? Everyone deserves a chance to contribute to something positive, James, I said, if they're willing to own their past. This isn't about forgiveness. It's about constructive repentance, perhaps. It was a risk, a huge one, but it felt like the right thing to do. A way to turn the final page on that chapter of my life, not with vengeance, but with an attempt at something akin to restoration. He didn't answer immediately, just sat there, the weight of the offer, the weight of his past, settling upon him. Later that week, I found myself standing at an intersection downtown. The same intersection where, in another life, a truck had ended my world and begun it anew. It looked different now. The city had changed, grown. So had I. The memory of the accident was still there, a faint scar, but it no longer held the same terror. It was just a part of my story, a catalyst. My rebirth hadn't just been about personal success, about righting past wrongs. It had, in ways I could never have predicted, set in motion a series of events that were changing the world, forcing conversations, creating new challenges and new opportunities. Dr. Chen, my old professor, had followed Rebirth AI's journey with a mixture of academic pride and awe. We met for coffee just as we had all those years ago when Aria was just a theoretical concept in my mind. I always knew your ideas were revolutionary, May, he said, his eyes twinkling. Even when you presented them as hypothetical breakthroughs, there was a certainty about you, even then. He smiled. You've changed the world, my dear. For better or worse, it's a different place because of you. I'm still trying to figure out the better part, Professor, I admitted. That, he said, is the work of a lifetime. At the annual Tech Innovator Awards, where Rebirth AI swept most of the major categories, I stood on stage, not alone, but with Zara and Kai by my side. Aria is not the product of one person's vision, I said, looking directly at them, my voice filled with a genuine gratitude that brought tears to Zara's eyes and even a rare, shy smile to Kai's lips. It is the result of a team of brilliant, dedicated, passionate individuals who believed in an impossible idea and worked tirelessly to make it real. The applause was deafening, but it was their faces, their shared triumph, that meant the most. My next big project, the one that now consumed my days and nights, was already underway. AI that didn't replace, but augmented. Tools that empowered human creativity, enhanced human intellect, fostered collaboration. Aria 3.0, as we were provisionally calling her, wasn't about doing tasks for people. She was about helping people do those tasks better, more insightfully, more humanely. It was a new frontier, filled with its own complexities and ethical quandaries, but it felt right. It felt like the natural evolution of my journey. The final scene of this chapter of my life unfolded a few weeks later. I was in my office, conducting interviews for a new role in our ethical AI division. A young woman sat opposite me, nervous but articulate, her resume impressive, her passion for the ethical application of technology palpable. Her name was Emily, and on her resume, under previous employment, was a single line: receptionist, tech dynamics. I looked at her, this bright, capable woman who, in another version of my story, could have been me. The irony wasn't lost, but this time there was no bitterness, no desire for symbolic retribution. This time, I wasn't thinking about replacing her or anyone else. I smiled. Emily, I said, tell me about your ideas for the future of AI. The circle felt complete. Not a closed loop, forever repeating the past, but an ascending spiral. From demotion to rebirth, from revenge to revolution, and now, hopefully, towards a future where technology and humanity could not just coexist, but elevate one another. The work, as Dr. Chen had said, of a lifetime, and I was just getting started.